And joining us now to discuss the current financial and political situation in Russia is political analyst Джейсон Джей Смарт. Jason, a pleasure to see you, sir. How are you?
Wonderful. Great to see you as well.
All right. So the budget is out. A lot of people, the Russians were saying that they weren't hit by the sanctions whatsoever. But the numbers look pretty bleak. What do they look like, really?
Well, yeah, the new numbers that have come out are substantially worse than what Russia would like to admit publicly. And I'll note that a lot of the data they don't make public. Since the invasion and the implementation of sanctions, they've taken a lot of it that used to be public out of the spotlight. You can no longer find it on their websites or anything else. So it's hard to tell. But it finally did come out that one of the most shocking statistics yesterday was that the debt to teachers has increased 12 times from what it was before, especially for teachers that are in the regions. And likewise, the total amount of debt increased 15 times over what it was before. Now, this tracks very well with the data that came out from one of their major banks yesterday that showed that revenue was down 4 times over what it was the year before. So, you see this in the private sector, in the banking sector, you see this in the public sector when it comes to the state budget. And the fact is that Russia has an untenable situation. It is not possible that an economy of its size without a foreign injection is going to be able to keep running forever.
That's right. And you mentioned teachers. Now, I just saw on Twitter a job post for a teacher in just outside of Moscow. So this is the Moscow region. And now the salary for this teacher was posted at 6,000 rubles. That's about $100. Now, as we know, Moscow is not a cheap place. The prices there are very similar to the rest of the Western world. How is this teacher supposed to survive on $100 a month?
Well, obviously their salary's gotten worse due to the inflation. The fact is the ruble's lost a ton of value. And that is something that they feel because they, unlike the private sector, they have outlaws in their budget of how many rubles for this year is a teacher going to get paid, and they can't really adjust it. So when inflation comes and hits them, like it has since the invasion and the implementation of sanctions, it's something they feel. It's not hypothetical. It's something realistic because they see the money disappear. They have 30% less money than they had before. And salaries for teachers for Russia have historically been low, but even over the last decade, it's had very little growth. And that's indicative of the fact that Russia's state budget is quite skin and bones to begin with. And part of the reason is the largest reason is corruption, that they steal the money out of the national budget. And the other reason is they spend it on things that are completely unnecessary, like invading their neighbors, which would probably be much better spent on helping their people to have a normal quality of life.
All right. And another thing I wanted to mention is how do we compare, people who take salaries, so employees, how many of them are paid by the private sector and how many are paid by the public sector? I see here a number of 40% in the public sector.
There's a lot of people in the public sector. There's a lot of people who are on the national budget or in the local budget and the regional budgets. And Russia is federalized. It's the Federation of Russia, right? So it is federalized. So a lot of things do go back to the more local municipal levels. And so, at the national level, yes, there is a substantial number. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's about 5 million people who work directly for the national government in a capacity there. Now, you have people, though, that are hired or working at the local level that are subsidized by the national level. But in total, what does it come down to? Yeah, it's probably in the range of 35% of the population is working for the government one way or the other.
Incredible. And now with their revenue this low, how do they expect to sustain this? Do they have a plan?
Well, it appears that Russia's plan at this point is to try to develop as much of an internal economy Ataturk as possible, where they are able to develop their own services and develop their own things. But where they're not being able to meet those demands in the end is things such as in production. The machinery, the vast majority of serious production in Russia, that is the factories that are producing anything you can think of, whether it's bottled milk or if it's farming, those pieces, that equipment is something that they purchased in the West. So when it breaks down or needs a replacement part, they don't have it readily available. The stuff that's older, obviously, the Soviet stuff, they've plenty of supplies. But when it comes to modern technology, they don't. It's not only the microchips that everyone always talks about. It's or the cars or the trucks. It's a lot more simple things that you'd see day to day, such as bread. I mean, the factories that produce bread, those have converted over the last 30 years since collapse of the Soviet Union to Western technologies because it's more efficient. In the end, proves to be cheaper than just keeping up with old, outdated machinery. That's simply something they're not going to be able to produce as the parts become unavailable.
Wow. Well, apparently they do have a lot of rupees that they could use to purchase things, but we don't know how that's going to work out. Now, I also wanted to talk about foreign corporations that were working in Russia and some of them that still are. What's the proportion at this point? Are there more foreign corporations planning on leaving Russia?
So, we've sort of hit a funny spot. I think a lot of the very, very big ones who wanted to get out and struggle to do so, namely those who work in finance, it's not so easy just to pull out. I mean, they have multi-year contracts that are billions of dollars, and it was a little bit complicated to just close up shop, let's say. But they are moving that direction. Now, some of the smaller ones, unfortunately, we see starting to break with that. Today, it came out that two brands are going to be going back to Russia, the brands that had pulled out. Recently, I saw also that there has been other companies, other businesses who have decided, despite initially pulling out of Russia, that they are willing to go back. Zara being one of them, and the other was Pull & Bear, I saw as well, had earlier pulled out of the Russian market, but now they're going to go back using a different branding. But they will be selling their wares in Russia like nothing had ever happened.
That's right. 1 year, I think, it was enough. Now they want to make some money. Unfortunately, morality and money. Anyway, so I also wanted to ask, I don't know if you're aware of this Yves Rocher. It's a skincare brand, I think. They did a recent...
Yes.
Tell us about that.
That was quite shocking. So recently it came out that in Moscow, of all places, that Yves Rocher, which is a French corporation that does skincare and cosmetics, had released I would assume it was for March 8th, Women's Day, that they released this guide for women on beauty. And it talks about the ethnic purity of Russians and that they are beautiful because unlike other cultures, they have not wasted their good genes by race mixing, but they've stayed pure. And it goes at length to talk about the purity of ethnic Russians and that this moment in Russia's history, we are particularly patriotic and excited for the future, and that our men are defending our country, and the women, the mothers and the daughters have always taken care of the family, but our men are now heroically saving our country. But when you read it, it sounds truly like National Socialism. I mean, it sounds like some sort of Nazi propaganda, talking about, and it has on the face, how the face should be divided, the proportions that an ethnic Russian should have, and how to look better with those proportions with their skincare products. But it is something that is truly shocking that I truly find it hard to believe that is something that is mainstream, considered acceptable in Russia today.
We're truly living in an upside-down world, aren't we? I mean, it's incredible stuff. And now, just quickly, we're running out of time. Just quickly, what's the general mood in Russia? Are the Russian people still on board with this special military operation? Are the Russians growing more weary?
Unfortunately, I think the majority is still on board, but I don't think it's something that's, a tenement of faith for them. It is not something of great importance, but they support it in the general sense. But we do see an increase in the number of people who are doing things against the state, partisan activity. Just last night, actually, there was a fire set near Vladivostok that set a Su-24 airplane on fire. A military jet was set on fire by partisans. And we see this a lot. There's been a number of partisan attacks on the railway stations. There's been a lot of hacking of Russia's security infrastructure by Russians. So we do see there is resistance going on within the country. Unfortunately, it is a minority. The majority do probably support the war still. But as the economy worsens, Russians will have to make a decision. It's bullets to go kill Ukrainian civilians or eating. And I think in the end, I would hope, they prefer to have food in their bellies.
Let us hope. All right, we'll end it there. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks for your insight, sir.